Hi, this is John here from the 2015 MCOW Auction Committee. My job with two others has been to do all the ticketing work for the MCOW auction. And today is Monday. We had the auction on Saturday night. And I kind of just wanted to share some of the lessons and things that we learned both in preparation for the auction and also, at the actual event. We learned a lot. So I've got a whole bunch of thoughts that I've just written down, and they're in no particular order, but they're the kind of things that I guess I would have liked before we went into the auction. Now, I can tell you it's a lot of work, and I'm sure that people will have told you this as well. It's very rewarding. We had a fantastic auction, but it is a lot of work, and there's a number of things you can do to actually make life a little bit easier for yourself. So without further ado, I'm going to just go through and talk through some of the issues. So the first thing is on the night, we decided that we were going to have printers so that we could print people's invoice and statements out on the spot, which kind of saves us some effort in terms of maybe not having to send it afterwards. So we ended up, a couple of the ticketing folks brought their own printers. We ended up buying another printer, and then on the night we discovered that, or about an hour beforehand, we discovered that it needed a new ink cartridge. So we had bought some of those cheap ink cartridges, and of course it didn't like those. So a quick trip down to Fred Meyer to buy a genuine ink cartridge. So look, there's a real simple one. Make sure your printers are working, make sure that you've got enough ink and paper and all that kind of stuff. We had 4 laptops that we used, and we had 3 printers, so we actually set one up as a wireless printer, and the other 2 were just connected via USB directly. So 2 people shared one wireless printer, and that worked really well, and 2 people just used direct USB. I can't stress enough how important it is to make sure that your printers work with your laptops beforehand, to make sure you've got the right drivers installed and all that kind of thing. It's really, really important. So the other thing that was interesting we discovered was that once the check-in process begins at the auction, it gets incredibly busy, and for the whole time, check-in through check-out, which is about 4 or 5 hours, the 4 of us who were operating the machines, we didn't even have time to eat. So one thing that was great was having a couple of extra helpers. So make sure you insist on having some helpers. And what the helpers can do is they can answer questions so that the people who are doing the keying don't have to be disrupted all the time. The other thing is the helpers can help sort of move people towards you, the next free person, to help key someone in or to check them out or whatever it might happen to be that you're doing. And they can also give them their starter packs or information packs, at the start of the event, with things like their name tags and their program and their bid number sheet or their bid paddle. So having some helpers is really important. Plus your helpers really need to be they need to be involved all the way through, and they need to understand the whole process. One thing we did is we made these little packs where we had the bid paddle, with the big number on a piece of paper. We had the program itself for the auction event, and we put those in a manila folder. On the outside of the folder we had the people's names. So it was all pre-prepared, and we had them in boxes. We had A through M and then N through Z in 2 different boxes. So as people came in, our helper could actually hand them their own sort of manila folder worth of stuff, and then they would come to individuals like myself to do the check-in process. Okay, so the actual use of the computers on the night, there's sort of 3 stages, and it's really important that everybody who's doing the keying understands thoroughly the 3 stages. The easiest stage is the check-in process. Basically, people come up, your helpers will give them their pack with their program, check their names. What you will do as a ticketing person is you'll go into the software, the auction software, you'll bring them up, you'll bring their name up, you'll check the address, you'll make sure they've given you an email address, and you'll make sure that the phone number is correct. Really important to make sure the phone number is correct and the email address, because after the auction, and we discovered this, after the auction you may have to go and chase 1 or 2 people up who haven't paid for something. That's kind of the easy part. You don't actually record anywhere in the auction software the fact that somebody's attended. Basically, you know who's attended and who hasn't attended by the fact that you've still got some manila folders with programs and things left over in them. The second phase is during the night. Different things like the silent auction or the live auction, different events will complete, and as they complete, you're going to find people from the main room are going to bring out the actual bid sheets. So each item that's gone for auction, silent or live, will have a bid sheet, and it'll tell you the winning bidder. So we all the people who are sitting in front of the computers, we all sort of took turns trying to key these things in. My recommendation is don't do that. Nominate one of your 4 people and get them really familiar with this process, one of your 4 laptop operators, and just have all of the data entry go to that one person, and make sure that they don't get interrupted, because it's really quite a lot of work, and they need to be good at keying, accurate, and they need to be comfortable with the software. So rather than split across 3 or 4 people, just have one person doing it. So, you know, when you're entering in the normal stuff like the silent auction or even the live auction, they're pretty easy because it's basically one item and a winning bid. Where it gets tricky is when you've got things like the 50/50s or the wine pools or donations and things like that, where you've got one item, but you might have several hundred people who are actually, you know, buying a $10 ticket to a raffle or to a wine pool or whatever. So there's a lot of keying involved there, and you really need to keep track of what's been keyed and what hasn't. We found with having the 4 of us doing the keying, it all got a little bit confusing. So one person, and make sure that person doesn't get interrupted, because there are a lot of questions that get asked during the night. The final phase is where it really gets fun. And if you can make sure that all the data entry is completed by the time you kind of really need it as soon as possible, as soon as an event closes, you need to get those the bid sheets in so the data entry person can key them. But once you've got all of those completed, including any bar tips, you can have all 4 people checking people out. And the checkout process, it's pretty crazy, because you actually have to go in and bring a person up, check what they've purchased with them, make sure it's all correct, make any adjustments, because there will be mistakes made, things left off. Then you're going to have to take their credit card, check or cash, and the credit card presents a whole different problem. And then you're going to have to print them an invoice and then send them over to collect their items. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. A couple of other things, kind of random things. One is make sure you've got some small change. So you might want to talk to the accountant. In our case, it was going to be the Wednesday before the auction, to let him know what small bills we needed. So 10s, 5s, 1s, basically so we had some cash change. Another thing is we arrived actually to set everything up at about 11 o'clock. We did that, then most people went home, and we came back at 5:30, between 5 and 5:30, expecting that people would arrive at 6, because that's when the event starts. To our surprise, people actually were arriving at 5:30 and wanted to be checked in, so we really didn't have a chance to get ourselves organised as the check-in and ticketing committee. So my advice would be make sure everybody arrives probably an hour and a half and no later before the actual official start of the auction. So a 6 o'clock start, make sure everybody who's doing the check-in, the people who are operating the laptops and the helpers, are all there at 4:30. Okay, so I mentioned checkout. When you're dealing with cash and checks, that's pretty straightforward. You have to make a record in the auction software of what the check number or the check amount is, and the fact that it is a check. Same with cash, how much cash did you accept. When it comes to credit card, what you can use is iPads or an iPhone. In fact, I was just looking for my iPhone to use you, but I'm using it to record this. There's these little dongle things that click on the bottom. I was kind of a bit worried about this because I'd never used them before, but it turns out they're extremely easy to use. There's 4 of them, so if you get yourself 4 iPads, or if you've got 4 iPhones, particularly the larger ones like the iPhone 6 or 6 Plus or whatever, they work really well. Now, they are temperamental, so people are going to hand you credit cards, you're going to enter in the amount, you're going to swipe the card on these little things, and it's not going to work. You're going to swipe it another 3 times and then it will work, or sometimes it won't, and you might have to completely close down the application on the phone, pull the dongle out, plug it back in, restart the application. All the time somebody's standing there. That's kind of life. The other thing why we found the phones worked a little bit better I don't know if they were just because they were a bit newer than the iPads we were using, or because maybe they were using the cellular network instead of the wireless network that's at the center there. The wireless network is very slow at the center, and some devices have trouble connecting. So having phones as well is a really great backup plan. Make sure you test both with your phone and with any iPads, maybe in a week or two beforehand, before the event. And those dongle things, you should get those pretty early on. The dongles, the modem, or the router, and all the technical stuff, the software for auction, it's all in a box that your committee will be able to get to you. So talking about a few other things, I think I talked about printing. We, for the first year, decided to print statements and invoices at the event. So as a person checked out, we would print out an invoice out of the software. It's a standard thing that comes out of the software, really easy. We would give it to the person, make sure it was correct, and then they could take it over to the collection desk and they could collect the items that they had won. I'm going to jump now into kind of a bit of the technical stuff. We used Windows 7 PCs or laptops. That worked really well. You can use, I think we might have had one Windows 10 machine in there as well. You need to make sure you have a host PC or laptop, and you're going to find that the procurement committee is going to use that for most of the time. And you probably, as ticketing committee, won't even get to see this until maybe a week before the actual event. And that's a bit scary because sure, you can get a copy of the software to play with, but you're not going to get to see all the items, how they've been loaded, and if they've been loaded correctly, probably until about a week beforehand. So we were a little nervous. A week beforehand, we did actually get that laptop, and we got everybody together who was in the ticketing group, people who were going to check people in and out. We got together at our house. We set up the network, so we got the router. We used the Cat5 cables that are there. We plugged the 4 laptops in all together. We set up a wireless network for the printer. We brought all of our USB printers over, and we connected the whole thing up and made sure it all worked. And one of the tricks is you have to map a network drive, which is can be a little bit tricky, and we found during the night we lost connection a few times between our client laptops and our host laptops. So at one point we actually had to restart our host, so the main laptop, so that one of the clients could reconnect to it. So my advice to you is, again, get there early at 4:30, make sure everything is up and connected. I would turn everything off before the event. Don't let things go into a sleep mode, because I think that had something to do with why we were, one of our laptops in particular seemed to keep losing its mapping of its network drive to the main machine, which meant we couldn't connect. So experiment with this beforehand, get familiar with mapping network drives, do as much preparation as you can. A couple of other things to be aware of, little problems that we had along the way, either in the practice session or on the night. The auction software will reside on a main laptop, the host. Make sure that the file or the folder that it's in is set up as a shared drive or a shared folder that all of the other laptops can use. I've kind of got another little video on some of this stuff, but I'm just mentioning it, something I wrote down. Another weird problem we had that I don't quite understand was one of our laptops had been working just fine, and then just before the event it would not connect. It could see, or rather the auction software wouldn't connect from the client laptop to the host laptop. It turned out we used the Windows 7 Network Assistant, and it was to do with a DHCP connection, so we had to turn DHCP on that client machine. So again, little things like this was working perfectly, and then just before the actual event it stopped working. Another thing, that host computer that's going to have the actual auction database, make sure that shared folder that I talked about just a moment ago, make sure it's set up for read and write. In our practice session we had a problem because it was only set up for read, so the auction software wouldn't actually recognize it on the client machine. So the client machines could see the host machine, but the auction software on the client machines couldn't actually see the folder, or couldn't actually see the databases that are in the shared folder. So I know that probably all sounds a bit geeky. If you're an IT person listening to this, maybe it's not so bad. Otherwise, I do understand it could sound a little bit scary. Okay, another thing is, I already mentioned this one, but I'll say it again. Make sure you get there early on the event night, because people are going to want to check in at 5:30, even if it starts at 6. So make sure you have something to eat. Make sure you go drink, because once it starts, you're going to be very, very busy. I think probably the hardest part of this whole thing, well, from a ticketing perspective, is that there's a whole lot of accounting involved. At the end of the day, all of the stuff that you've done prior to the event, like selling event tickets, selling raffle tickets, has to be all summed up with all of the money you collect on the night, and you've got to be able to account for all of it. So make sure that when you're selling the event tickets and the raffle tickets before the event, that every single check and every bit of cash that you receive, you know what it's for. So we talk about using a OneDrive spreadsheet where, as families sell the actual event tickets, they can enter them in on this OneDrive spreadsheet. They can do it themselves. What we did as the ticketing committee, as the people who actually had to collect the money, was we would actually go and put the check number in and the amount in the OneDrive. So we'd actually have the guest's name, then we would have the check details that went with it. So we could actually keep track of exactly how much money we had collected in checks and cash. Got to keep the two numbers separate, and ideally, if you can track whether the sort of the breakdown between raffle tickets sold beforehand and event tickets sold after, beforehand, if you can keep sort of the money separate like that, that'd be great, because at the end you're going to have money coming in prior to the event, during the event, in the week before the event, and you're going to have to be able to say how much money was spent on different things, like how much was on event tickets, how much was on raffle tickets, how much was on wine pool, how much money was spent on silent auction items. So you kind of got to really keep track of everything. If you've got somebody in your group who's an accountant, get them to do that. That's definitely not my expertise. I kind of looked after more the IT side. So yeah, once again, keep really good records. We were very lucky. I think we ended up with well over $30,000, and I think we balanced within just a few dollars. So that was a great job by our accountant type person. Okay, timelines. So you need to have your event tickets ready for sale to give to families by the September family meeting, assuming that you are going to have a November auction, and you're going to have to collect all the money and have it all back and any unsold tickets back by the end of October. So people have got basically 6 weeks, mid-September through to the end of October, to sell their tickets. We gave each family who had an ambassador attending, we gave them 10 auction tickets at $35 a piece, and we also gave them 150 raffle tickets at $1 a piece to sell. So it was up to them to sell those tickets to friends and family, and we made ourselves, as the ticketing committee, available at the October family meeting, and then on the Fridays before, the couple of weeks before the event, we made ourselves available to collect the money. People could drop it over, and we knew who it was from, how much it was for, and we also took unsold tickets. Okay, so I mentioned that there is a thing called a OneDrive account. The OneDrive is a shared cloud type spreadsheet, and I would recommend you just use the one we used and create a new folder and load it up there. And this is where, once you've given out all those tickets for people to sell, as they sell them, they go in themselves, not the buyer, but the ambassador family representative that sold the tickets. They go into the OneDrive and they enter details of the sale. Who did they sell it to? First name, last name, address, phone number, whether they need, how many tickets, whether it was gluten-free, all those sorts of details. And as the ticketing group, you own that OneDrive spreadsheet. And you will need to show people on the night when you hand those tickets out to everybody in September, you're going to have to show them how to use it. So we did our practice in the library. We were able to bring it up on the big screen, and we did a demonstration of how you would sell tickets. It's pretty straightforward, but you will need to continue to monitor that online spreadsheet to see how many tickets are being sold. You're going to have to chase people up a few weeks beforehand, before the end of October, remind them that they need to try and sell all of their tickets or return them to you as soon as you can. I think at the end we sold about, let's say, about 180, 190 tickets, and we probably of the non-parent tickets, and then I think we had probably another 35 parent tickets that we sold, and then I think we had about, let's say, 8 to 10 couples who didn't turn up on the night. Of course, all the parents did. Okay, after the auction on the Saturday night, if you're the ticketing committee, or particularly if you're the accounting people, you've got to reconcile all the money that you collect on the night. So all the checks, all the cash, you've got to reconcile it with the auction software numbers, because it tells you how much things were sold for and all that sort of stuff. Two of us spent 6 hours solid doing the reconciliation, counting, double counting, trying to figure out where numbers were wrong, looking through all sorts of reports out of auction. Again, we were not experts on this stuff. We had not used it before, so we spent a lot of time exploring. Also, we were really thankful for having those fantastic records of all the pre-event sales, so the tickets that we sold beforehand, what we had in the OneDrive, raffle tickets, whatever. So it's a pretty big deal. Make sure you give yourself time, and as I said, 2 of us were doing it together to make sure we got it right. One of the things is credit cards. During the night, you'll use your iPad or your iPhone to accept credit card payments, and use this Inuit software. It's called GoPayment. One of the things you can't get from your iPhone or your iPad easily, at least using the app, is you can't get like nice reports. So what I found is you can actually log on to the Inuit GoPayment website. It might even be called QuickBooks, using the Mika Citizens of the World at gmail.com account, and you can go in there and you can have a look and print reports out. So on the Sunday after the Saturday event, we went out and printed all of our electronic transactions, all of our credit card transactions, because that's what we got out of QuickBooks or out of the Inuit software, and that made it really easy to know exactly how much money we collected via credit card on the night. Now, the software itself, the auction software, has the ability for you to enter some of those details, not all of the detail, but at least the fact it was a credit card transaction and how much it was for and who it was for. But it's nice to be able to go into QuickBooks online to see the actual transactions, because keying mistakes happen. So be prepared to do that on the Sunday morning after the event. Go in and print out that report. I want to talk through, again, one of the more complex parts, and that's the checkout process. Checkout is complicated because the auction's still running. We found a lot of people started to leave just before the live auction. That's because it's starting to get late, and also some people aren't interested in the live auction items. So it's very noisy, and you'll start to end up with large queues of people who want to get out quickly. And you'll be doing something for the first time. You'll be checking people out, and you'll be trying to use the credit card software. It can get a little bit stressful. So it's good to have some good practice with this and to know the process. So here's the 5 steps of how to check out. So the first thing you want to do is, when someone comes up and you greet them, ask them they had a great time, all that sort of stuff, is review the purchases. So you bring them up, you find that person, and you bring their account up online in auction, and you quickly go through with them the things that they won. And you're going to get questions from people about, well, I thought I won something else, or I bought a wine pool and you didn't mention that. So you're going to have to make a few decisions on the spot about, do you just add it in? What are you going to do? You're going to try and find the original bid sheet and see who actually won. I can't give you precise answers. Every case is different. So once you've reviewed the purchase and you and the person, your customer, agree that, yep, you've got it right, the next thing you're going to do is ask them how they want to pay for it. If it's cash or check, that's pretty straightforward. They give you a cash or they give you a check. If it's credit, then you're going to have to use the iPhone or the iPad with a little dongle plugged in. You have to key in the amount, so it might be $200, and then it's going to you push a button and it's going to ask you to swipe the card. If you're lucky, it'll swipe and it'll work the first time and everything will be great. You'll just ask them to sign it, and there's an option there if they want to receive an email receipt as well. If you're unlucky, then what you're going to find is it's going to stall or it won't work quite the way it's supposed to. You'll have to clear it, maybe try a different device, maybe close the app, pull the dongle out, plug the dongle back in, reopen the app, re-enter the 210. So you're going to have to familiarise yourself with that part of things. Once you've accepted their payment and you can see it's all good, then a really important thing, and don't forget this part, you must go back into the software. Hopefully it's still open with the person's details, and you've got to enter the kind of payment that was made. So you'll have to enter, was it cash, credit or check? You'll have to enter the amount, and you'll have to enter who took the receipt. So for me it was John, and that's a little drop down list box. So you've got to do that because that's really important in the end when it comes to the reconciliation process, that both the software and the cash and check or credit records, they marry up. Okay, after you've updated the auction software with the fact of how the person paid for things, then you might want to print them off an invoice or a statement, which should have a zero balance because they've paid for everything. Hand it to them, and then point them off in the direction of the collection desk where they can pick their items up. Only two more things, which is good because I think I've said enough, and hopefully I haven't made it sound too scary. So the first thing is, during the night, lots of events are closing. So maybe silent auction A, silent auction B, silent auction C, live auction. The moment those events close, you really need someone picking up all of the bid sheets that have the winning bidders and bringing them to you to have your data entry person to key in, because you get a lot of them. We had a stack of bid sheets, I kid you not, that was this big. It's a lot of keying, so you really want someone who's good at it. Or if you choose to do what we did and spread it across all of us, good luck with that too, because that gets tricky, because you're going to get interrupted with people who want to check out really early. You're going to have other people from the different other committees asking, how much has been sold to date, and there'll be other things you have to deal with. So that was why myself and the other members thought maybe you just want to dedicate someone to do that and let everybody else know, don't bug them, just let them do data entry. The other thing to be aware of is tip sheets. So if you're running a bar like we did, then people will also not only just put money in the tip bar or the tip bucket, but they will actually have a sheet there for tips. So you need to get that. We had a problem with that in that we didn't get the tip sheet until well after a lot of people had left the event. So our software didn't have any record of people, pledging tips. So on the Sunday when we went to reconcile all of our stuff, we probably missed out on some money because that people had already left the auction and we hadn't collected those tip sheets. So try and make sure anything where people are pledging for tips or purchasing items, get them as soon as possible. The other thing is the bid sheets. They'll have the item number at the top, a description. Then they'll have places where people can enter in their paddle number, and an amount. And then what they did our year is that at the bottom, they actually had a way that you could guarantee a win. So, if the item started at $10, they would have an option at the bottom for, say, $200, where if somebody put their paddle number against the 200, basically guaranteed that they got that item. The people who are going around and actually collecting all of the different bid sheets, they should circle the winning bid. And sometimes things got a little confusing because you sort of get used to looking for the circle, and sometimes the winning bid might be right at the bottom there. In other words, the guaranteed win. And we had to go back and rework some of our stuff on the night because we had missed that people had done the guaranteed win. So make sure the people who are collecting the bid sheets and are circling the winning bid aren't just circling the last bid, but they actually check down the bottom there. And if there's somebody who's doing a guaranteed bid or guaranteed win, make sure they circle there, again, for your data entry person. The very last thing, really simple, is the auction software is good. It has a lot of features, it's a lot to learn. It has some great reports that come out of it, and you'll see them under the heading of reports. We used them extensively on the Sunday when we were trying to do our reconciliation. We networked up a couple of computers again, and we were putting reports and marking them and trying to make everything good. So make sure you familiarize yourself with the reports. That's about it. Hopefully it doesn't sound scary. It's a lot. We managed to do it, and none of us had done this kind of thing before. I think if we were to do it again now, it would be a lot easier. But we had a great time, and it was very successful. So I hope this is useful to you, and again, hopefully I'm not putting you off, and I'm sure that if need be, we'll be able to help you next year. Although I must say, I would at least like a little bit of an option to go in and put a bid on myself. Anyway, thanks very much.